Hey everybody, the Polaris Ranger XP 1000 is an impressive utility machine with tons of power, but the price tag can also get pretty high up there, and that is something Polaris is looking to change with this right here. This is the new Ranger 1000, and it replaces the old XP 900, and yes, there's still the XP 1000 for sale. Are you confused yet? Well, in this video, I'm gonna clear things up for you. We're gonna go ride the 1000. I'll tell you how it feels out on the trails. We'll crawl all over it. I'll tell you everything that's new about it, and then we're gonna talk about the price, and I think you'll be pretty impressed with just how cheap this machine is. So what are we waiting for? Let's go. So as many of you guys know at home, if you watch the channel, I actually have a Ranger XP 1000 Backcountry Edition right now back at my test property. So I'm certainly very familiar with the XP 1000, and the second I jumped in this 1000, I was sort of like, oh, well, it's just an XP. The similarities are really there. It feels like an XP from a driver's perspective because the cockpit is so much the same. Now, when it comes to the power, yes, you do feel the difference. The XP 1000 can actually get pretty insane when you lay into that thing. 82 horsepower, it's wild. This machine, the power feels much more controllable. It feels like the right amount of power for this machine. It's not going to give you the all-out thrills of the XP, but it's certainly more than enough to have some fun. And then more importantly, because the power is accessible at a lower RPM, you're just going to be able to use it more. So the other thing that upgraded with this unit was the tow rating. You can now tow 2,500 pounds with this Ranger 1000. And that's the same rating as on the XP 1000. So that just goes to show you that, again, the power numbers aren't quite as high here, but they're definitely still usable. And you feel it on the trail. You put your foot into it and you do get this nice low hit of power. To get a little more feel for towing, I'm here in the 1000 now with a couple hundred pounds of firewood on the back and some hay bales in the bed. So we're gonna feel what this power feels like. So I've got her in low, two-wheel drive. Let's take off and see how it feels. Really nice, you know, really smooth engagement. The power comes on right away when you put your foot into it. It didn't struggle at all to move this load. Now again, the rating here is 2,500 pounds, so I'm nowhere near the tow rating, to be fair, but even still, it's nice to see just how easy it gets the load moving. And now just for fun, I shifted to high. Let's see how it feels taking off in high. Okay, so it definitely works a little bit more in the low end. Of course, you don't have the lower gearing, but you know what? The power is no issue at all getting this load moving. And then dynamically, I mean, I don't even feel the trailer back there. I know it's not a ton, but you know, a few hundred pounds of firewood is no big deal for this 1000. Now another thing the 1000 does not have are drive modes. So the XP 1000, you have sport mode, work mode. This 1000, none of that. And that makes the clutching that much more important. And the clutching was completely redesigned for this unit for that exact reason, to give you access to all of that power. Now we're here with Amory, a driveline engineer who worked on this new Ranger 1000. And Amory, why don't you tell us about the new clutching here? Because I understand the clutch has been totally revised, right?
Absolutely. So all brand new from the ground up. We didn't reuse one component in the CVT system from the Ranger XP 900. What we did is we built upon the Ranger XP 1000 clutch and scaled it to work in synchrony with the new Ranger 1000. So it started with a lot heavier duty components. The clutch weights are wider for better wear. We made the spider rollers extremely durable on this thing. In fact, we've more than doubled the durability even from the previous year's Ranger XP 1000 on this model. Where before we were expecting them to last anywhere from 1,000 miles or so before service intervals, we've actually doubled that on this new Ranger to make sure that folks can be out there working longer and working harder with it day in and day out.
The power band here is, the power is available lower, right, than the 900 and what's on the XP1000. How does the clutch sort of play into that? Because I mean, I guess the whole idea here was, you know, usable power rather than a crazy high horsepower number, right?
Exactly. We've clutched this to run right in the meat of the power band of this engine. We clutch it so it runs right around that 6,000 RPM, so you're right near peak torque on it, right near peak power. It's not your racy razor type of clutch setup,
sure,
but it is made so that you can talk really easily to the person next to you. We were building upon a lot of successes that we had with the Ranger XP1000
sure,
on this one, so it was a matter of fitting it in the form that was appropriate for it and getting that clutch calibration to be the perfect balance of being able to tow heavy loads, being quiet for the customer, and still making sure that we're not leaving folks behind that are expecting to ride their Rangers recreationally from time to time.
Still have some fun.
Absolutely.
80% of this engine is the same as that XP. The biggest difference is the top end. This engine only has a single overhead cam, where the XP has the dual overhead cam. Now the difference does come in the power numbers. So this power plant makes 61 horsepower and 55 pound-feet of torque. But one of the keys that Polaris likes to point out is that the power now comes on much lower. So peak torque comes on at 3,600 RPM, and that is 3,000 RPM lower than on that old XP900. So this engine, while the horsepower number is actually a little bit down compared to the old XP, this should have more usable power. Looking at the suspension, that's definitely one of the areas where the 1000 is different than the XP. So this unit has a very similar suspension setup, but it only has 10 inches of travel in the front and the rear. The interior here is fully revised as well, at least compared to the XP900. If you get in this 1000 and compare it to the XP1000, they're actually very similar, but that's not a bad thing. And one of the differences which makes a big difference is right down here you have 5 more inches of leg room here, and that's for the driver and passenger. Now besides that, tons of storage, 2 cup holders right up here. Now the Ranger 1000 only has 1 big glove box rather than the double on the XP, but the 1000 also gets this massive storage down here by my right leg. There really is a lot of storage in this unit. There's also more storage under the seat. So the passenger seat flips up like that and reveals this bin. And then same thing with the driver's seat. It flips forward and reveals another separate bin over here. And it's nice to have sort of separate little storage spaces for all your tools. Now, another thing new on this unit are the seats themselves. So this is the premium model. It's the top trim level, and you get these really plush seats. If you go for the base model, they're a little bit thinner, more of a plain vinyl. So definitely nice to have the upgraded seats. They are nice and comfy. Let's walk around the unit and just take a look at all the new things on it. You can't help but notice this new grille, and to me it reminds me of the Toyota TRD Pro with that big Toyota right across the grille. I actually really like it. And there's something here too that's about functionality. Look at that, the grill pops right off that easy, and you can get right into your rad. So if you are mudding, or if you're running through thick brush or anything that's gonna clog up your radiator, you can get right in there. And so this pops right back on like so, and then we can also pop the hood off. Now underneath the hood, you have access to the cooling system, but more importantly, access to the Polaris Pulse bus bar. Now here on the 1000, you're only getting 3 spots, and these are for accessories. So all your accessories are just plug and play. You plug them right in there and you're good to go. And if you do want a 6-slot Pulse bus bar, you can get one. So if you got a bunch of accessories, you'll be good to go. Now let's keep on walking around. Actually, I got to show you this bumper too. So this bumper was new on XP1000, and with the mid-trim model, you don't get this protection. Here on the premium model, you get the whole thing. And what's cool about the bumper, right down in here, it has setups for a winch and for a snowplow. So it's ready to go right from the factory for both of those accessories. You got 26-inch wheels here, and this is a unique tread pattern. Polaris designed this specifically for this unit, so you're not going to find those tires anywhere else. Now let's keep moving back, and when you do get to the cab, Everything here is basically XP1000, and that kind of remains the same for the rear end. So the dump bed here, exactly the same off the XP1000, and the payload rating is now up to 1,000 pounds, which is pretty respectable for this unit. Another nice thing about the dump bed is access to your engine. You can get in there, work on it if you have to do maintenance. It is pretty simple to get to. Now, overall ground clearance for this unit is actually a little bit lower than the XP1000 at just 12 inches, where the XP sits at 13, but that's not a huge difference. That's a lot of what's new on this model. And here's one other kind of subtle difference you probably wouldn't notice. That's the air intake right there. So the XP1000, the air intake moved to the front. That engine needs to breathe a little bit better, but here it stayed over here on the side. So there are some subtle differences, but when you consider the 900 compared to this 1000, there are a ton of changes. Steering on this unit, very similar to the XP1000 as well, and that just means that it is quite light. And once again, from a utility perspective, if you're spending all day in this thing, you want light steering, you don't want it to be working you. However, you do give up some of that, kind of feedback in your hands that is nice when you're out trail riding. Once again, the machine can be forgiven for that, but it is something to note. Once I was out there on the trail, you do feel the power difference, but it's not that big a deal. It's still got plenty of power. The biggest difference in my mind is the suspension travel. So because you just have less travel here, you're just not able to, move at quite a high speed over the whoops, over the bumps. It doesn't eat stuff up as well. You're definitely feeling a lot more when you're in the cab as compared to the XP. But you know what? This is much more focused on being a work vehicle, whereas the XP is a little more fun focused. So once again, you can forgive the vehicle for that because it's not meant for blasting over the whoops. But probably the most important thing about this unit is the price. This unit is $300 more expensive than the old XP900. Pretty impressive considering all of the upgrades here. That brings the base price to $13,000 in the US. Now the 13 grand model is not this one. This is top trim. The base model gets 25-inch tires, steel wheels, and no bumper up front. Then you can bump up to the middle model. That is the EPS. So essentially it's just the base with added electronic power steering. When you bump up to this top trim, you're getting 26-inch tires, aluminum wheels, and this full front bumper, and the price of course climbs to $15,000. And take a look at this chart where we compare prices with the competitors. For all my Canadians out there, it's not quite as much of a bargain. The base model 1000 starts at $15,900, and then you climb up to the premium trim, you're looking at $18,400. The Polaris Ranger XP900 was the best-selling side-by-side of all time, so it is safe to say that this is an important redesign for the brand. It's not all about flashy horsepower numbers or crazy performance. This thing is about hard work day in and day out, and for that use, I think Polaris has really nailed exactly what this machine needed to be. So that's it for this review, guys. Why don't you go below in the comments, let me know what you think, and of course hit like, hit subscribe, and then come right back here to TFL for the latest news, views, and real world reviews. See ya.